Hey everyone, and welcome back to Microtech Knives. We're here with none other than Anthony Marfione and then myself, Ray Helms. How you doing today, Tony?
Doing great, Ray. How about you?
Doing well. This is going to be an exciting episode because this is the episode you guys have been waiting for, where we give away the Jade Top Ultratech, and it's been signed by Anthony Marfione from the sharpening video. So what we're going to do to make this fair, guys, is we are using Comment Picker. So what we've done is we've put the link for the YouTube video here. We're going to go ahead and filter the duplicate users because I know there were quite a few people that commented multiple times and we don't want you having multiple entries. We're going to go ahead and populate the YouTube comments. There were about 1,700 folks that actually commented on the video, and we do appreciate each and every one of you. So as soon as this gets done, we'll see exactly how many comments there were. All right, so after filtering, we have 1,718 entries. So what we're going to do is just hit Start Raffle, pick Random Winner, and here we go. And the winner is Black Sheep 6874. So Black Sheep 6874, you are the winner. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have you email me. You'll just use rhelms@microtechknives.com. We'll make sure you're in a state where an automatic knife is legal, and we'll get that shipped off to you. All right, congratulations to the winner, but I don't think that's all we have in store for today's episode. Tony, what are we doing today?
Today we're going to take an in-depth look at how we do our hefting on all our custom knives. So whether it be a Combat Troodon, Dragon Slayer, Masterpiece, Dirac, whichever, goes through a single process where every single surface is ground by hand. So to match the lines, match the surfaces, we do this exclusively down in the grinding room, and it's still done by hand today. So the hefting process is something that we've done, God, for as long as I could remember. You know, whether back in the day in Vero Beach, we did it, we called it polishing or basically matching or pairing. Yeah. But the hefting, that's what we call it today, and we're going to give you an inside look.
So basically, this is almost like blending surfaces where you don't see any seams or mating of surfaces.
That is correct. A lot of times when you pick up a piece that's made by hand, you should see these attributes because guys will pair liners with bolsters or pair bolsters with liners, and it should be absolutely perfectly matched. I mean, we can do that pretty close on a machine, but if you want perfection, it has to be done by hand.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right, guys, so what we're going to do is we're going to go downstairs into the grind room. Tony's going to get suited up, and we'll come back at you from the grind room. Stay tuned.
Hey, everyone. On today's episode, we're going to take a close look at the custom, our Combat Troodon. You know, Combats have been around, I think, since probably about 2006, and it's absolutely one of my favorite builds. So we're going to take a look at, you know, what goes into the, you know, what they call the slab side version or the all stainless steel version of the Combat Troodon. A lot of times we'll do a variation of different blades, but you could always expect a hand ground blade, polished, satin finish of different variations to go on this handle. So just to kind of let you know, we start out with the absolute best material, nothing like getting through one of these handles halfway and finding a void or an imperfection or a lap. So we use the finest 4/16 stainless that you could possibly buy. You know, we do that, you know, before we machine these, we do austenitize these and we heat treat them and temper them right at about 28 to 32, which makes a perfect platform also for hand engraving. So after heat treatment, they go through the process of inspection, double blasting, and of course we deep relief cut engrave the dagger and also the nomenclature on the sides. So we do roughen those surfaces before we do that, but after we get the engraving done, we do a double vapor blast to clean up any discoloration from the laser markings, and then we'll prepare them, straighten them, check them, screw them together, pair them so they're actually numbered on the interiors so that if we take them apart, they'll all go back together the same way, because once they're hefted by hand, if you don't pair them back up, you're going to get some mismatching. So today we're going to take a look. You know, typically what I do is I'll use a Horticar Products grinder. They're fantastic for doing horizontal work like this. I have to do the entire periphery around the outside, has to be finished before I go onto the face sides. That's at least how I do it. I mean, I could vary, but this is how I've been doing it, so we're going to get a chance to show you today. By the way, just as a warning and precaution, as you can see, I have a, you know, a apron on. Anytime you're in a grinding atmosphere doing any kind of work, we always use the very, very best PPE gear, safety glasses, respirators, full helmets for that matter. So today I'm going to do some demonstrations without my PPE gear. I'm going to wear safety glasses, but it's going to be very difficult for me to communicate with the camera having the PPE gear on. So just note, if you do this work, always remember to use your PPE gear. Okay, we're going to get started. Okay. At this point, I'm also going to change contact wheels to these larger radiuses in here. Typically on this operation, I do like to cut the lights so that I could focus my energy and my sight right here. I get less shadows using these type of LED lights, and it allows me to focus on the periphery work. I do the same thing when I grind blades. All right, the 120 grit is done. I'm going to go ahead and cut the grinder. All right, so that means all surfaces, including the button flap pocket and everything, radiuses are done. So now it's time to start refining our pattern. Again, remarking where we were at to make sure that we can get enough coverage. Sometimes I was going to mention also markers are great, but I highly recommend pencil, because if you're working with natural materials, bone, composites, things like that, and you get marker on them, they'll seep into the surface and ruin your raw material. We're going to hit it on the 220. At this point, I'm also going to change contact wheels. All right, at this time, the 220 grit is done. I think at this point, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to make any kind of changes on your foundation. Same with blade grinding. When we go through that tutorial, you know, I consider at the 220 phase or stage of your game here, your foundation work needs to be complete. As you go on to finer grits, it's going to take much less material, and you don't want to get these pieces hot as you're grinding them. So I'm going to say that your foundation work should be absolutely done at the 220 grit stage. I was going to also mention too, this particular build on here, we normally would satin finish. The radius is around the outside, like the sample that I have here that's finished. This particular build, we're going to go ahead and stipple the metal itself, or stipple the outside edges, which is going to look fantastic with the blade builds that I have coming. These will be spike grinds going to USN this year, and we're pretty excited about it. So the stippling, that's something I'll have to show you in another tutorial. It's not rocket science, but you have to have patience again with the cutters to do it, and it's done by hand. Increase the surface feet just a bit. You know, we could have a discussion on surface feet of these grinders, but that's something that you're going to have to dial in yourself to get the optimum cut for the type of material that you're doing versus the life of the abrasive. So everybody has their own opinions on how fast or how slow to go, so I'm not going to even go there today. And that's another thing I was going to state. A lot of people say, well, Tony, how hard do you press into the wheel when you're doing this? To be honest with you, not very hard at all. You know, unless I'm doing some type of operation with a rough grinder, you've got to let the abrasives do the work. If you're mashing these wheels, you're distorting your surfaces. So again, it's what I consider to be a very light pressure at this stage. You've got to let the abrasives do the work. Now, something I was also going to mention to everybody is everybody always asks me, Tony, how long do the belts last? You know, again, it's going to be dependent on the operation. It's going to be dependent on the type of hefting operation, material, everything of what's done. I mean, some materials I get a little bit longer life than others. It's like if I'm hefting titanium with meteorite, I'm wearing out belts flat, you know, and it's, you can't hyperextend the abrasives because when they stop working, they just simply stop working. You know, sometimes we could use a lubrication to keep them cool in between cuts, which helps. It's messy, but it gets the job done, you know, so depending on the abrasive, that's why we choose 3M. We do get what I consider to be the best life, depending if we're blade grinding, sharpening, or hefting. We seem to get the best blade out of, or the best amount of pieces out of these abrasives, you know, per. So on something like this, I know you see me changing the belt. I won't throw that belt away, but I could usually probably do, depending on the operations, I could probably do about 6 to maybe 10 outside peripheries with these belts before I'm going to wear a little bit of a hole or track in the belt. All right, A30. The outside periphery is finished. So in comparison, next operation that we're going to do at this point is we're going to go ahead and what we can heft the faces. You know, the faces are pre-machined in, you know. At the end, you know, a lot of people say, well, Tony, you use all machines. Well, I didn't when I first got started. So, you know, if I want to get in here and use my Bridgeport or use my lathe or use any of those sorts of knives, I can reproduce this knife from a block of billet, using my Bridgeport, making the manual cuts, doing everything by hand. Coming in here, grinding the angles, grinding in the periphery, everything. I can make the turn parts, I can make my own screws, I can make my own blade. But then you'd be getting one of these a month. So that's how many man hours can go into some of these builds. So yes, do I use a CNC piece of equipment to rough my chassis in? Beyond a shadow of a doubt. But we're using the best materials to get these finishes and everything as an end result. You know, I challenge anybody. If you could do it using whatever tools, I always rate the part on the quality and the execution of the work. So however you're getting your process and however you're getting your quality, as long as it's quality when I pick it up, kudos to you. So now we're going to go ahead and heft these faces. And again, I want to start on a flat platen. You know, I have a bucket of water in case the surface gets a little bit hot. So I'm going to do this slow, and we're going to go ahead and break these surfaces in using a 120 grit. At this stage, I like to use a Trizac belt. They call it, or slang, the Gator from 3M, Trizac. It looks like little bricks on here. It distributes the heat a little bit better, and it holds water a little bit better. So what I typically do when I'm doing those faces, and this works great if you're grinding pearl, or you're grinding meteorite, or just about any kind of composite, is I'll go ahead and I'll let that belt just get a little bit wet right here. You know, sometimes if I'm doing a lot, I might even hook up a cool mist just to throw a little bit of mist on the belts. I never have time to set it up, so I'm usually setting up a bucket, and I'll have one belt sitting in the bucket while I'm using one, and I'll swap them out and rotate them out. But at this stage, an A45 or this particular belt wet is going to give me the absolute best finish. It's a little messy, but it's well worth it. It's not getting hot, but what I'm doing is I'm introducing a little bit more fluid to the wheel. But it just cuts. It cuts unbelievably well and smooth. All right, guys, at this point, the chassis has been hefted completely on the faces. The only thing you won't be able to get to see today is, of course, the stippling action that we're going to be doing along these radiuses, which is a really fine finish. Again, no rocket science. I do it with a tool. I do it with a burr carbide, and I reciprocate across these surfaces to get a stippled surface, which is just very, very sexy. We're going to back the cameras up just a little bit because there's one other process I do before it goes to our builders. And that's a product called a Scotch-Brite. So pretty easy. I'm going to show you how I do it. All right, everyone. We're going to finalize these handle finishes with a little bit of Scotch-Brite. I use, again, 3M products. I use a fine, which is a gray, and I also use a what's considered to be a mid-fine or a coarse, which is a maroon. And we like those. They've been consistent throughout the years. Something I was also going to add that I forgot to mention is, I get it. When you're grinding with abrasives, okay, at that 120 stage, what you typically don't see, and I didn't want to do it to create a duster inside here while we're filming, is I clean everything very, very good in between grits. My handles, the machines, the belts, myself, because if you get particulate from that grit in there while you're using a 220, what's going to happen? You're going to drag that grit through your grinds. Always remember that. Cleanliness, as good as you can, helps out a great deal. All right, we're going to get started. On the Scotch-Brite, I'm going to use a little bit of distilled water at this point. Again, it's not the faucet water. I use distilled because at this point, I don't want to pick up any contaminants or frost my surfaces or discolor it and have to back up. So I'm going to use the coarse first. I use these little trays. And again, this is just an operation that's done by hand, which simply refines the surface again and gives a very nice warm effect, especially for a satin finish. It's done wet. Again, trying to keep my grain as straight as possible. I'll couple my hands underneath here so I can go over the radiuses just a little bit. Again, as you can see, I'm slightly reciprocating across the surface so I don't stay in one spot. I'll do the sides. I'll lay it down flat, get a good position in my hand, and I'll do the flats. This is another part of the process that if you have any remnant scratches from the last grits, you're going to see it at this stage because it's going to highlight them like a sore thumb. Doing the gray. All right, I think I got it. I'm going to back up under some lights and take a closer look. All right, she's finished. So folks, that's how we heft the stainless steel handles. There's a couple different ones that we do. Some are a little bit more involved than others, but the combats are one of my absolute favorites. I was going to mention too, I don't know where we would do this down the line, but this is a 8 of 2021, serial number 27. I am going to give this knife away at a later date. I'm going to work with our teammates and figure out some level that would be creative to do that. But, we want to thank each and every one of you. Microtech would not be successful without our fan base and our collectors and our end users at the end of the day. So, we just want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for staying tuned in, and we want to try to give a little something back.
All right, Tony, thanks for that great tutorial. That was a lot of information.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun doing that today, and I hope you all enjoyed that. And we look forward to doing the next, next tutorial that we can come up with. So
now, guys, it would behoove you to subscribe to the channel, like, and tell your friends about it, because that chassis, that custom Combat Troodon, number 27.
Number 27 is going to be earmarked for a giveaway.
That's right. We don't know when, we don't know how, but we do want you to subscribe to the channel, like, and share with your friends. And this is something we're in for the long haul. So, Tony, thank you again for everything.
Thanks, Ray.
Outstanding.
Appreciate you.
Have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.